Right. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Overcoming Resistance to Fit for Purpose Land Administration. We will start shortly. Apologies about the 5 minutes delay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Royal Mabakeng. I will be the moderator for today's session. I am based at the Namibia University of Science and Technology here in Windhoek. I will be joined today on the panelist by Professor Chikbu, a professor here in land administration at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. And I will also be joined by Dr. Rosalie. Rosalie, for the participants. And then I will provide more detailed introductions a bit later on, and also joined by Kias, who is the principal consultant at ESRI, and also joined by Francis Birungi, who is a gender and human rights and specialist. So organizing this workshop as part of the International Federation of Surveyors Working Group on Fit for Purpose Land Administration was quite very important in order for us to create more awareness on coming fit for purpose land administration. Fit for Purpose Land Administration has advanced through policy guides, pilot implementations of projects. We'll be hearing some thoughts from Francis on some of the projects that they have worked on. There's also been scholarly publications, and there's often some persistent challenges and resistance within and also outside the land administration community. So what we're going to do today, we're going to draw on the extensive experience of land registration, and we're going to draw on the extensive experience of experts from diverse professional backgrounds. And this panel will discuss or aim to seek critical conversation to identify the underlying causes and also the reasons for resistance, and also for strategies to overcome some of these impediments. So the goals of the workshop, we have 4 main goals. Firstly, we aim to identify the key sources and manifestations of resistance to fit for purpose land administration implementation within the land administration community. We also aim to explore effective strategies and best practices for overcoming the resistance to fit for purpose land administration. We'll also discuss the role of advocacy, awareness, collaboration, and technology in reinforcing fit for purpose land administration, and also look at what are the actions that stakeholders can make in order to overcome some of the barriers to fit for purpose land administration in order to promote improved governance, poverty reduction, and also sustainable development in different countries. So the panel will discuss or focus the discussion on the following aims: the nature of resistance, looking at the strategies to overcome resistance. I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is Professor Chikbu. While Professor Chikbu is preparing the presentation, and also if I forgot to welcome you, welcome to our workshop, and thank you for making time to listen in. Please do use the Q&A function available on the platform. If you have any questions, we will also open up an opportunity for you to ask questions later on. So Professor Chikbu is a professor in land administration in the Department of Land and Spatial Sciences at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. He is a post-disciplinary academic with professional backgrounds in estate surveying, land management, land tenure, spatial development planning. He teaches research, he trains, networks, he writes and advises on land methods for improving societal changes. So he comes with a diverse knowledge and experience as well. He's also the co-editor-in-chief of the Journal of Land Use Policy. Professor Chikwu, over to you.
Thank you very much for the introduction and for organizing this webinar. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prof, we can hear you.
Okay, so I also like to thank everyone who's out there who's listening, and the discussion basically is on the resistance. And when I was asked to write on this topic, I was wondering, or to speak on this topic, I was wondering if, by resistance, whether it's deliberate or not deliberate. So because I wasn't sure of that, I just decided to present on observations and based on impediments to the fit for purpose land administration. For a start, I don't think I would assume that everyone who's on this, in the webinar understands land administration. But for us to talk about fit for purpose, it's important that at least I create my own understanding of it. My understanding is that the fit for purpose land administration is any sort of land administration system that applies within the context of spatial, legal, and institutional frameworks that are designed to be most fit for the purpose of securing land tenure, land value, land use, and land development, which are the four cardinal aspects of land administration. Now, this definition I'm borrowing from the Global Land 2 Network, particularly the Arab Land Initiative. But there is something unique about the fit for purpose land administration. It is the three core elements that drives it. And those three core elements, as you would see in the diagram on your right, is flexibility, focus on purpose, and incremental improvements. Those are the features. That's what makes it up. That's the character that is expected when we say that a land administration system is fit for purpose. However, what we do not talk about is when all these elements are not completely present, or sometimes they are present in different forms. You would see, in my opinion, when there's a focus on purpose and there's a focus on incremental improvement, but there's no flexibility, we still expect that the improvement should be purposeful. Where there is a system that is incremental and there's flexibility, but no focus on purpose, we still expect to an extent that those improvements should be flexible. And the other way around, when there's flexibility and focus on purpose, but incremental improvement does not apply, we expect that at least there should be flexibility and purpose. So this is based on the assumption that these three elements, even though they're expected to be there, might not always be there. Now, with regards to fit for purpose, the fit for purpose land administration, from what I've seen, did not emerge from a vacuum. There were other land administration systems or quasi land administration systems or methods that had predated it. And I tried to look at two particular ones. One is the self-help land development, which is very common in sub-Saharan Africa, and you find it up in all parts of the world. And it's been around since time immemorial, which is where people apply incrementality and flexibility in developing land or in the use of land. It's a typical example is where to build houses, it takes some people 10 years to build houses. They clear the land, as they get the income, they keep improving on it. This aspect is very much applicable when it comes to development. But then it also has those features of flexibility and incrementality. And of course, the issue of purpose that we find in the current conventional fit for purpose. When it comes to framework, it is normally institutional, and its advancement is rooted around the culture. Some cases, self-help has developed into policy, And of course, a lot has been written about that. There's also the flexible land tenure system, which is, we find that in Namibia, where the focus in terms of applicability is land tenure, but it has the features of flexibility and incrementality. Flexibility in the sense that, the name is flexible land tenure system, so that's what it was meant to be flexible. Whether it is that is a different story altogether. But it's also incremental in terms of its focus on tenure is such that it starts with a starter title, landhold title, and is expected to push forward to freehold. So it has that incrementality applied to it. And it is very much legal and institutional. And its advancement is very much hinged around its legality and policy. Now, when you look at the fit for purpose, the conventional fit for purpose, you find that it's expected to have everything. But when you come to its advancement, you find that its advancement is rooted around policy guides, pilot implementations, and scholarly publication. So it lacks the policy element. So whereas the other what I would call part-time fit for purpose tools are policy supported, but the fit for purpose land administration itself currently in most cases is missing out in terms of policy support. And I just used two examples to show this. I'm sure there are a lot of other examples that exist in all other places, but this is just to show that the missing piece for now is the policy angle. Now, with regards to the causes and causes of the resistance and strategies for action, what I've tried to do here is look at the incidences of resistance and then look at factors that lead to those resistance and then recommendations for action. In this regard, a typical incidence of resistance is there's the historical distrust and conflict sensitivity. So this is rooted around the fact that past failed land reforms exist, and some communities may be skeptical about new reform tools, land tools, or land administration tool in this case. Now, this is not to say it's not rooted around anyone. It's very typical that when land tools are applied in communities and they do not work, when the same set of people come with a new land tool, they might face resistance. And a way to deal with this is to sensitize and continue to sensitize and create awareness and emphasize on the flexibility, purposefulness, and incrementality aspect of fit for purpose. But there's also the legal and policy area. I won't hinge too much on this anymore because I've mentioned earlier, too many rigid laws exist, but none is specifically backing the fit for purpose land administration, whereas the other tools that the fit for purpose land administration is supposed to remedy are already being backed by law. And so a way to improve this would be to engage more in policy engagement with politicians and policymakers to ensure that fit for purpose is accepted as a policy tool. There's also the perceived economic and technical constraints. The fit for purpose, we preach so much about the perceived high, low cost in terms of its comparability to other conventional systems. But then there's also that perceived high cost where those who should benefit from it find themselves still not willing to bear the cost for its implementation. And there's also the aspect of limited technical capacity. So the fit for purpose also requires the capacity for implementers to navigate policy dynamics that exist, in the field, as well as play politics. And this is an area that we don't talk a lot when we discuss the fit for purpose. So capacity building and development is still very critical. Lastly, there's the institutional and governance challenges that we face when it comes to applying the fit for purpose. It cannot work in a place where there's weak land governance structures. There's also where there is a lack of political will, it would hinder its adoption. Also, professionals still prioritize conventional land titling. And if we want to be really, really genuine and realistic, we find that many of us, the professionals, still, especially those that make their money from the conventional system, they still do not very much engage in fit for purpose or recommend it because it might not work, in their favor financially. So that's also something we need to look into. So we need to improve in terms of proactive social, getting into the proactive social sector, and more direct engagement with authorities. And professional surveyors need to align practices to propel approaches because do not forget, I don't think professional surveyors make a lot of money from propel approaches. And so they need to carry on, the banner of fit for purpose. But most importantly, to carry on the banner of fit for purpose does not mean simply branding it. There's a lot of branding. We speak about it, we promote it, but there's also a sense that we are promoting it to show that it's ours rather than actually to push capacity and ensure that it creates impact. And I think that's one area we need to look at. Most practitioners have and believe still in other alternatives, even though they do a mouth service when it comes to fit for purpose. And so I think we need a change of behavior in this regard. And on that basis, I think I would stop here because I've taken a lot of time so that my colleagues can maybe go into the nitty-gritty of this. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Chiku, for providing us with an overview of the background on fit for purpose land administration. And what stood out to me is that there's quite a lot of distrust in the introduction of all these new tools and methods within the land administration sector. So the next panelist, we are changing the order a little, Rosalie. The next presenter is going to be Francis from the theoretical overview on overcoming resistance to fit for purpose land administration. We are going to go to an expert panelist, Francis Birungi, who will be providing us her perspectives and experiences as well. So a quick introduction on Francis. Francis is a gender and human rights and development specialist with over 2 decades of professional experience in organizational leadership, program management, advocacy, and policy influencing for gender justice. Her thematic areas of interest are childcare, protection, women land rights, and climate change. Francis is currently the executive director of the Uganda Community-Based Association for Women and Children's Welfare, UCOBAC, and a chairperson of the National Land Coalition in Uganda.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Royo, for that introduction. And thank you everyone for being here to share our experiences and lessons with the Fit for Purpose Land Administration. As an organization, UCOBAC, we are one of those organizations that are currently applying Fit for Purpose Land Administration in the work that we do, in the land work that we do. And basically why we align towards working on Fit for Purpose Land Administration and promoting it in the land in land management is basically because we see that it works for women and girls, because of the underlying principles that underpin Fit for Purpose Land Administration, the fact that it is flexible, it is affordable, it is accessible. All these are really key principles in ensuring that those groups, especially those that are socially marginalized like women and girls, are able to effectively participate and benefit from the land governance processes in their communities. So as an organization, we feel very strongly that Fit for Purpose Land Administration works for women, works for girls, and works for other socially marginalized groups to be able to effectively participate and benefit in the ongoing land processes, specifically land rights registration processes. However, as we do this work, there's a lot of challenges that we faced, a lot of resistance that is coming through in terms of working with the Fit for Purpose Land Administration process. And we'll speak to some of the challenges that are very visible in the work that we do at country level in Uganda. And most of them have been alluded to by Prof, but I'll just emphasize those as the challenges that we face in terms of resisting the fit-for-purpose land administration, and how that is really affecting the progress that we are making in making sure that there is gender equality and social inclusion in regards to land governance in the country. One of the challenges that is very critical that we face is around the legislative framework that we have. If you look at the land laws, the regulations and guidelines that we currently have as a country, for example, the Survey Act, the Registration of Titles Act, all these are old laws that do not provide for, for non-conventional surveying or non-conventional land administration processes, like for fit-for-purpose land administration. And these are the laws that really guide the land management and land governance in the country. So we find a challenge that we are using fit-for-purpose land administration, but the laws that we have currently do not recognize or do not support fit-for-purpose land administration. Those laws that I've mentioned, the Survey Act and the Registration of Titles Act, provide for conventional surveying. That's it. However, when it comes to new technologies, the flexible technologies that are promoted by fit-for-purpose land administration, those are not supported by the laws. And also, we know that reviewing these laws, reviewing these legislations is a very cumbersome process. It's a very lengthy process. So we are, trying to engage with government to ensure that these laws, the laws that are really not flexible, that are providing for only the conventional surveying processes are reformed to be able to consider also fit for purpose, because it works for women and girls, it works for socially marginalized groups. So that is a challenge that we face, that we are doing something that is not supported by law. And that really challenges us in the sense that the products that come from the fit for purpose administration work that we do, for example, the work that we are doing using social tenure domain model, we have a product that is not really recognized and supported strongly by law because of the provisions that exist. So that is one of the main challenges that we face. Another challenge that is related to the laws is the land information system. So as a country, we have a national land information system that only captures data from the traditional, the conventional survey methods, and only looking at 3 tenure systems, yet the country has 4 tenure systems. And most of the work that we are doing is under customary land. In terms of formalizing and registering land rights under customary land. However, the land information system that we have is not designed to capture data from customary land, let alone data that is captured using some of these emerging technologies. So that again is a challenge in the sense that some of the products that come out in terms of the land certificates, the certificates of customary ownership, are not integrated in the national land information system, and that becomes a challenge for us. However, there's a lot of work that is ongoing in terms of reviewing the system and working on the system to ensure that this data is also incorporated, because then we have a system that is only holding a limited data for the 3 tenure systems, which is around probably 20% of the land. But the majority of the land that we have, which is 80%, is outside the national land information system. So we're doing a lot of advocacy, a lot of engagement with the Ministry of Lands to make sure that the system that we have, the national land information system, is adjusted in a way that will incorporate data from these non-conventional survey systems that like fit for purpose land administration. The other challenge that we are also faced as actors using fit-for-purpose land administration is the mindset of professionals, which also Professor has mentioned, especially the surveyors. The surveyors really feel that fit-for-purpose land administration is a threat to their profession. And it kind of transfers their role and their work to technical persons like the mapping teams, mapping assistants, the area land committees that they feel do not have the technical capacity to be able to undertake land mapping and so forth. So there's a lot of resistance that is coming from the professionals through their body. A lot of engagement is being done to ensure that we work with them to understand the importance of fit for purpose administration, and also to give the confidence that this does not replace their profession, but it is a way in which we ensure that there is inclusivity, and it's an approach that can be able to to ensure that as a country we have security of tenure at scale, other than having a limited number of people that are able to have security of tenure. So that is also a challenge that we face, that we have surveyors, also lawyers, that really feel that this fit for purpose administration is really a threat to their profession, and therefore there's a big pushback around any work that is done using fit for purpose land administration. The lawyers feel that fit for purpose land administration brings in alternative dispute resolution, and that of course takes the work that they would probably do, and also the resources that that they get from providing these services. So that is also a challenge that we face, and we're doing a lot of engagement still with the professionals to really have them appreciate fit for purpose land administration as a as a very critical land administration approach that we need to adapt as a country. I know for sure that Makerere University, the higher institution of learning in Uganda, has adapted fit for purpose land administration in its course units for the students at master's level. So we hope that mindset change would be very critical in really reducing the resistance that we have around fit for purpose. And then finally, we also have a challenge of capacity. Especially for those individuals and institutions that are mandated to undertake land administration, especially at local level. As a country, we have this mandate is by the area land committees that really work at the lower level of governance, at sub-county level, also at the district level. So these are persons that are not, may have very limited digital technology capacity to be able to apply some of these technologies that exist. So really that also becomes a challenge. There's a limitation in terms of scaling fit for purpose land administration because of limited capacity. A lot of investment has to be done in terms of training to provide skills, but also equipment that is required at all levels, at the levels, local level, for them to be able to sustain fit for purpose land administration. So the financial resources that are required are heavy to sustain fit for purpose and also to strengthen capacity at that level. So yes, so those are the challenges that we face at country level. And however, there's a lot of progress that is happening through a lot of engagement with government, especially the Ministry of Lands, to have conversations around fit for purpose and land administration. We currently have some guidelines that have been developed that can inform the policy review. The Survey Act and the Registrations Act are also under review. So we are seeing a lot of progress around adapting fit for purpose land administration, but nonetheless, there's a lot of resistance, as I have just mentioned, but very hopeful that with time, there will be acceptance of fit for purpose because it actually works for all. There's enough evidence that the traditional methods have not worked for many, especially the marginalized groups, the women, people with disability, and the poor. So we really feel that fit for purpose should be something that is adapted and taken up by government to be able to be inclusive and to scale land tenure security at country level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frances, for that overview regarding the challenges to using fit for purpose land administration in Uganda. I think it was quite interesting to see that there's still hope in overcoming this resistance with the development of guidelines for policy review. So hopefully we would see some change or change reflected in the legislation. So our next speaker is going to be Dr. Rosalie King-Squill. Rosalie? Make sure. Okay. Yes, while Dr. Rosalie Kingswell is preparing to share her slides, I'll do a quick introduction. Rosalie has 40 years of experience as an independent, critical, applied academic, policy and action research consultant, specializing in all aspects of land reform, particularly land governance, land administration, and land tenure. Her applied research has included case studies for restitution and tenure reform. She has a background in tenure systems, land administration, property rights, succession, inheritance from an African and also from a cross-cultural perspective. She is currently exploring an institutional approach to customary land management systems within common law and statutory systems of land administration. She has been associated with various university research institutes, NGOs, and civil society platforms, and she also continues to work in that space. She has also published quite widely in the field of land tenure, succession and inheritance, and land administration. Rosalie, over to you.
Thank you so much for that. Sorry, such a long introduction. I should have cut it short. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone who's joining. And the two previous speakers, I think my presentation is really going to fit very well with both of yours. I echo a lot of what you've said. I chose to focus on a very particular aspect, which I feel is overlooked, because I kind of hoped that everyone else would cover all the other issues, which I think you have done. So I kind of am zooming in on a particular angle. I also like Professor Chigbu thought, well, resistance implies deliberately resisting. And the kind of situation I have witnessed here in South Africa is not necessarily so deliberate, but more a kind of unconscious resistance, I suppose. And also, having worked for so many decades, I'm grey-haired, as you can see, so one have noted that governments might have a very good reason to preserve the status quo, and they don't want to rock the boat. This is also echoed by Professor Chigbu, but and Francis, but you know that FFPLA might be seen as a potential threat, but not only to I want to expand to whom this threat applies, because it's not only to the surveyors. I want to suggest that it's a potential threat to people in government. So the question I'm posing to FFPLA advocates is, how can FFPLA engage with existing practices, things that are already happening on the ground, existing practices, systems, and structures that are already embedded in complex institutional arrangements that have linkages right across the country, through communities and through individuals. In my view, there is still a technical bias in FFPLA, because it assumes that you can enter a situation and apply particular techniques and using very, very strong principles, and that will be sufficient. So I want to focus on two overlooked issues, mainly number one, because number two is complex, but mainly number one. I feel that FFPLA is still seen as something external. It's not supposed to be, as Professor Chigbu said. It has a strong branding, and it's seen as something that's coming from outside. So who introduces it? So contrary to what Professor Chigbu said, where FFPLA cannot work where there's weak governance, I want to suggest it also doesn't work where you have very strong governance in the formal sector, in the formal land administration sector. If it's very strong, it's got very strongly embedded institutions that are going to resist change. And in South Africa, we find an unwillingness even to talk to any external players. People from cadastre have tried to come and offer support, and the government will always say, no, we're going to do our own pilots, we're going to do it ourselves. There's a resistance to academia, there's a resistance to NGOs, there's a resistance to outsiders, what's people seen as outsiders. But we are working hard to change that perception. So in my view, FFPLA is very highly principled, and it starts with these feel-good, it's very aspirational. It starts with feel-good aspirations that certainly come across as so logical, it seems nobody could surely, gainsay any of it. Surely this is so logical, why don't we do it? But it sort of misses the grounded realities, and grounded realities are based in existing power relations. And these are not only at the higher levels of government, they are right through government, right through all levels of government, right through to local communities. So to say that one can just use participatory methods in a community is not enough, because there you're going to find power struggles as well. And then the second one that I'm not going to really go into deeply here, because it's, then you really get into property law. But the reality that off-register rights or customary rights are not grounded in one-to-one relationships between a person and a property. And that is the mainstay of the formal system. You can actually find a parcel, you can find an owner, even if it's several owners, it's an owner, a set of owners, and join them together. You can't do that in customary systems. So any technical system is going to be challenged. It also doesn't address modes of in customary intergenerational methods of passing on property that is often not done through individuals, but through a lineage system. So one just wonders how we can develop techniques that can accommodate those. And I have thought a lot about whether the land administration domain model would be able to accommodate these, but I'll come to that later. Doesn't want to move now. So yes, I think my main message is I do not personally feel that FFPLA is sufficiently geared to the realities of power. It hasn't really come to grips with institutional and legal pluralism in the sense of how it plays out in the ground. It doesn't fully acknowledge that if you did implement it, it would actually lead to fundamental shifts in local and national power relations. It will actually change things. It will change social networks. It will interfere with patronage networks. Because you're going to start documenting rights, you're going to start documenting women's rights, it will interfere with those existing networks of patronage. So implementation would actually require fundamental shifts in state systems, in state structures and powers. And I don't feel this is sufficiently, addressed by FFPLA advocates. Because FFPLA, if it's done to its logical conclusion, does imply some level of institutionalization. And it also does require, I feel, I've changed in this way, I've actually moved. If it's too flexible and there's no standardization at all, it exists at a very place-specific local level, and then it is almost impossible for the state to administer if it's just always left in those very complex local relationships. So I have moved towards thinking you do need levels of standardization, and how do you do that without messing up, local customs and local practices that everyone knows well. But in South Africa, we find many of these are now benefiting local elites, really very, very much so at the expense of the ordinary people. And we've seen that in some local studies that have been done recently in a project I was involved with. And all of them are showing up how local elites are trying to make use of these messy local arrangements to gain their own power and money and prestige. So FFPLA would lead to a loss of power by local leaders in traditional community, etc. And even if you do use the participatory methods, sometimes we find those only engage some segments of the community, and communities are very, very seldom united. So it's just gone backwards. So again, I want to say that the fact that communities are very, very seldom homogeneous in South Africa, this might be more extreme than in other African countries, but here we really do have heterogeneous communities, in addition to some that are more homogeneous. And if FFPLA is only piloted locally, and you strike these divisions, you are going to not get very far. And alternatives like community ownership, which we have in South Africa, we've got communal property associations. They've really failed quite badly. So we have to take into account these local structures that are entwined in networks of power and patronage. So we must be be a little bit wary of this local participation, where it's only performative, but doesn't really dislodge the entrenched interests of elites. And there have been cases in reported from Indonesia, or was it Bangladesh, someone I knew well, where an FFPLA approach actually did quite a lot of harm because it didn't engage with those. So I'm saying then in conclusion that it's not so much conscious resistance as much as avoidance in my experience, and very much South Africa focused. There's the political angle. It threatens vested interests in current systems and networks of power, including, in departments that administer land admin, right through to communities and family level. Because don't forget, even in families, there are particular patriarchs who control land administration very often. It could even threaten local business interests and so on. Then the second one is institutional misalignment. If it's misaligned, if the policies, laws, and departmental silos, this very much coincides with what Francis was saying. The existing policy, laws, and departmental organization very seldom align with the FFPLA philosophy. So, unless one can find ways of alignment, one is going to run into big challenges. Then there's, thirdly, institutional territorialism. That is, I partly alluded to this in the first one. There's resistance in government structures to external influences. And then I've talked about the localization issue, where if you are going to be making these changes locally, it means you're doing it sporadically and not systematically. And if you're doing it locally, it's not going to be taken up in government, unless there are going to be very big structural changes made in government. So this means that the advocacy side of FFPLA, I feel, has to include some recognition of extremely difficult local politics. And I totally agree with Professor Chigbu that the policy side of things, has been neglected. So that was my take. It was focusing on... Yeah, sorry, my phone was off, but it came onto my laptop. I'm so sorry about that. That's my take on it. And I think our three presentations have all had little angles that work quite well together. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Rosalie, for your contribution. And I do agree with most of the points, especially on institutional territorialism, where every department in government would want to own a solution. We do have similar experiences here in Nigeria as well. Now we're moving on to our next speaker. Yes.
Yes,
Just a quick introduction of
okay.
for Kies before he starts. All right. So Kies is the principal consultant for Esri at Esri Global since 2000 since 2022. He is the practice lead on land administration at the Geospatial Authority Department for Professional Services. He holds a master's degree in land and water management. After a long term of an assignment in Rwanda and Bolivia, he has been working for more than 10 years in environmental and geoinformation sciences at Wageningen University and Research Center in the at Cadastre, the land registry and mapping agency in the Netherlands. He has been there for 12 years as the director for Cadastre International, working on various projects across the world in assisting implementing innovative solutions. His expertise is on land administration, e-governance, and he also makes contributions to fit for purpose land administration, IGIF, and FLA. Kies, over to you. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you
that.
so much. I see a big image of myself on the screen, so that's something to look at because I won't have slides. Sorry for that. I have to apologize to you all for that because I'm on holidays, so I'm using my telephone to get into this meeting. So hopefully everything will turn right, but I will just speak to you. I was asked to give my ideas about understanding the nature of resistance and also some strategies to overcome this resistance. And let me start. I categorize it in three parts only. So and I think much has been mentioned already. So I think in that sense, I can follow a bit the previous speakers. But if we want to understand the nature of resistance, I took out three issues. One is it threatens business models. I think that's the first resistance that I've seen in many places all over the world, especially from surveyors, but also from lawyers. I think they foresee reduction in their business and in their income. So there is a resistance to that part. And as long as we don't provide a good alternative for that business model, I think they will remain resistant to what is happening. So there should be a clear explanation how this business model can be positive as well, and maybe even more positive than it is at this moment. This, I think Francis mentioned this already as well, but this is all also very much protected by high precision definitions in the laws. And we heard Professor Chigbu already mentioning that there are very old and rigid laws that are hampering our development sometimes. But we have to realize also that we define laws ourselves as well. I mean, we vote on parties, we vote for politicians, and we are part of the system as well. So there is a need sometimes to change laws to come into a fit for purpose approach. So it threatens business models. That's the first one. The second one is, I hear that very often, we don't want low tech. In many countries, fit for purpose land administration is associated by low tech. And I think that has to do a bit with the branding, maybe. And I'm from the branding generation. Sorry for that, but I think it started with branding. But in the branding, it was a feeling of that's a low tech solution to people. And I think we should realize that fit for purpose is not about high tech or low tech or whatsoever. It is about a balance between the cost, the time you have available, and the quality of the solution that you make. And it should be evolvable over time. I think it should be a sustainable solution. And I'm just going to quote Stig Enemark once in this presentation, but he's always said, don't start something you cannot sustain. And I think that's the basic principle of fit for purpose. So low tech is not related one-to-one to fit for purpose methodology. And the third part I want to bring in understanding this resistance is that we have to be realistic as well. We live in a world where maybe sometimes not everybody wants to have land rights for all. Land is one of the biggest economic assets in many countries, and it is not always that everybody wants to have good governance, land rights for all, and all those kind of things. So we should be realistic, and I think both Rosalie, you mentioned it as well. The realities of power. I think that you mentioned it. I think the realities of power are there, and it's not always an ideal world. So we have to be aware of that and try to overcome that as well. So I try to get three components which make us understand the nature of resistance. Now, how to overcome this? How to overcome this resistance? Well, what I see in many places, what people do, they just ignore everything. That's the main strategy. You just frame land administration as fit for purpose, and this is done. So you just say we have a fit for purpose land administration without explaining, because yes, indeed, everything can be mentioned fit for purpose if you're creative. But I don't think that's the best strategy to go into. But that's what I see in many places in the world. First thing I still think is the most important is knowledge sharing and development, but also inclusiveness. And I think the previous presenters, all three of them, went into that part, into capacity, in the knowledge that this has to be then the showcases that you need, but also all the different solutions that there are in the world. We haven't mentioned here the framework for effective land administration. I think LADM and STDM are mentioned already, but there are also commercial off-the-shelf solutions. Everything is there, and people should be aware on how to use it and how to work with that. So capacity development is a very important one. The second one that I think is very important to have a strategy to overcome it, and I say first you have to develop a policy based on good governance. I think that's really the basic. You have to develop business models. You really have to show what is happening if you use fit for purpose. And you have to have an implementation approach. So you have to develop things. It's just not mentioning that you fit for purpose. No, you have to develop this policy, this business models, and this implementation approach. And there's a role for all of us. I think there's a role for governments, but there's also a role for consultants and companies, for the academia, and for the NGOs. Everybody has a role in that. We have to start developing those kind of things. And then finally, I want to bring in a final point, and that's a good strategy, I think, is to innovate. Fit for purpose is not a static thing. The world goes on, there is new technology, there are new insights. All things are happening at this moment, and we have to innovate. We have to be aware that maybe the solutions of tomorrow are better than the solutions of yesterday. So I think we should update the fit for purpose approach as well and improve our implementations. We should look at the new infrastructures, legal structures. I think also in the legal structures we can do a lot. The technologies, there is a new role coming in for AI assistants and agents, for automatic feature extraction, for integration, all kind of different information sites, and interoperability. So there's a lot happening in the world at this moment we should look at. And in the end, we should develop scalable approaches, technologically, but also institutional, also financial, a lot of those things that are able to scale up and scale forward in a fit for purpose approach. This is my introduction. I hope it adds up to the previous speakers, and it's a good basis for a final discussion on how we can overcome the resistance of fit for purpose land administration. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Kies. I think you came in with the solutions very clear and straight to the point. We really do appreciate that. So we are in the part of our presentation where we give an opportunity for questions and answers. There are quite some questions on the chat from the panelists. But before we get into, I wouldn't want to drive the questions. If you can just show by raising your hand on the system. This is for the participants, so that we can activate your microphone and you can ask the question directly to the panelists. All right, so one specific question that is last in on the presentation, that is for Kies, is how would you define an implementation approach? What would this look like in practice? That's a question from Stefan van.
An implementation approach, I think, normally is something that you develop very specifically for the situation you're in. There is no one implementation approach for all of the world. It really depends on the situation you work on. What is the budget that you have? What is the time that you have? What is the the quality that you need to meet up with your purpose? There is not one implementation approach. But I think, again, you have to look at this triangle, time, cost, and quality, to identify what you want in your specific situation. I think there are very good guidelines. I worked a lot of time in my life on the framework for effective land administration with a team at Cadastre International. And I think in that framework, there are mentioned what are the aspects that you have to look at if you want to develop such an approach. It is not an implementation approach, framework for effective land administration, but it gives you the guidance on what the aspects are that you should have an implementation on. So I don't have an answer in one implementation approach. Sorry for that.
All right. Thank you, Kies. So the next question that we have for Tsitsi. Tsitsi, can you please go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the panelists question?
Okay, thank you, Royal. I need to ask Kees Tiju on the issue of rigidity and siloedness. Even in literature where we are actually interacting with the theory of fit-for-purpose land administration, I am not seeing rigidity and siloedness highlighted as the security features of land administration systems. But in actual fact, rigidity could be showing resilience and impenetrable of the land registration systems, a significant feature of security. What do you say as a comment of rigidity and siloedness as features to security systems?
Cool. All right. Thank you very much, Tsitsi, for the question. I would give it also over to Professor Chikwu to add on to this one as well.
Just a moment. Is that question for me?
It was passed to Kees Tiju.
On the issue of rigidity, right?
I passed it to Kees, did you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you passed it to me, but I don't fully understand your question, to be honest, because you say it is about security features that your question is about, because I don't know what you mean with the rigidity on security features, to be honest.
Right. What we have come to know is that fit-for-purpose land administration, it promotes flexibility. And
Yes.
it's one of the principles that it lists, but it means that it is going against rigidity. And rigidity here has been demonstrated by presenters that laws are rigid to change. But they also are somehow in an indirect way revealing that the land administration systems are resilient and impenetrable. But I haven't seen at any point whereby rigidity and even siloedness has been defended for, advocated for as security features of land administration systems. But from your opinion, based on my observation, what do you think? What do you think?
I think that a fit-for-purpose approach does have flexibility, and I think that was already mentioned by Professor Chikwu in the beginning. That fit-for-purpose is about flexibility. There is no one approach, one size fits all. It is not there. And I think that makes it sometimes also a bit complicated because there is not one way you can follow and then you come up with a system. Also, there are no green fields in the world. You never start from a point where everything is open and you can just define it in the way that you want, and everybody wants to have a full land rights for all kind of approach. There is always a system that you have to enter into. And you have to change, sometimes make small changes to a very rigid system that is already there. So it is not a fit for purpose land administration is not an approach that you can just design and throw everything away and go on with fit for purpose land administration. No, it is a framework that you fit to the situation that you have, and you define the different parts where you think that you can make changes to make it more fit for purpose. Is that an answer to your question?
Thank you, Kies. It does provide direction in terms of how to overcome the rigidity in the system. So the next panel participant who would like to ask a question is Jean. Jean, can you please go ahead and unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Jean-Yves Pirlot, and I'm Director General of the Council of European Genetic Surveyors. And I don't really have a question, but I have a remark that I would like to share with the panelists and see how they want to react on it. Because indeed, if we speak about people who are resisting, often they mention surveyors, and we are representing the European surveyors, so I think I'm well placed to give our opinion on this. And I think indeed that there's also a branding problem from the start. Of course, we have nothing against a word that has gained appreciation all over the world, but for us, fit for purpose is a tautology. In the first course of geodesy, we learn that all what we will do during our career must be fit for purpose. It makes no sense to work and do something that is not fit for purpose. So this is the first remark, and for us, we already said it many times, but nobody listens. But we tell you, if you are looking for ways to overcome the resistance, this would be a first thing. And yeah, we also feel that the surveyors are not really asked here. Of course, it's discussed a lot at the level of FIG, but there are not many real surveyors around the table. And when I speak about real surveyors, please don't take it wrong, but we mean professional surveyors, not only academics and political engaged surveyors or surveyors from the administrations. We mean the surveyors in the field. Because fit for purpose is not only for developing countries, it's also for developed countries or for countries. We always speak about Europe as a developed region, but we have still underdeveloped regions where some new approaches are very important. And of course, one of the speakers insisted on the economic part of it. Of course, surveyors are not angels, and they also want to earn their money, and they are not interested in systems where the economic question is not well defined. And this was also said by Kees. Of course, we must show to the surveyors who are in the place that they will not lose their income. And to come back to my first branding question, I know that one of the parts of Fit for Purpose speaks about sustainability. But when we hear as outsiders, the main critics against Fit for Purpose approaches is that very often administrations or organizations come in a region, they develop a new project, and they indeed establish a new system. Everything is done, and then they go away, and a few years later, everything is lost. And maybe this is maybe too far, but it's the impression that we get from the outside is that there's a lack of sustainability. And that's why CLGE, since many years now, is proposing at least to upgrade the sustainability chapter from the fit for purpose approach to call it sustainable fit for purpose. It means that you can start with a simple system, but that from in the conception already, you think about what you will do to improve the system, to make it more precise, for instance. We spoke about precision and more technological. So you can start with a simple system, but already fit to accept a future development, a future improvement. So that's why we are proposing the sustainable fit for purpose approach. And we also, you know probably the saying, if you give a man a fish, he will eat. But if you learn him how to fish, he will eat for the rest of his life. And we think that it's important in the approach of implementing fit for purpose or sustainable fit for purpose systems is to put the surveyors as central people in this and to teach them to become better surveyors and to improve their livelihood as well as the livelihood of the citizens of the considered country. This is our position, and I took part in this meeting to underline it again because we say it since many years now and we never hear any reaction on this.
Well, thank you very much, Jules. Just before we give an opportunity to the panelists to respond, I would like to call on two participants who have also contributed quite a lot in the chat, if they could offer some of the contribution. One is Jamal Brown, and the other is Michael Berry. Jamal, are you open to share, please? All right, that's if Jamal Brown is still in the meeting. The next one is Michael Berry.
Jamal Brown is still present in theory.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
you
we
hear?
can hear you. Yes, that's Michael
Okay.
Berry. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I started on this with a working group under Mandela's government on land registration and surveying options for the new South Africa. And I designed something called the talking titler system in the 1990s and early 2000s. You are going to get resistance to change in any situation. But what I see with, flexibility, you talk about it in fit for purpose, but is that really the organizational culture that you have within most land administration organizations? Many of them work like a machine. Okay, and then there's some that are not. So if you're on the old system where you were doing paper-based documents, you would have people in clerical positions who would process things and they didn't dare move off the production line. On the other hand, if you got in, when I've done work in regularization authorities, where you've got to try and adjudicate very quickly and work out, who has what rights, who is being excluded, they show tremendous desire for innovation and tools and so forth. So there are these vast differences in how you're working for things. The other thing I've come across is political risk and how that affects an official. What makes somebody work for government? Let's say stability of work. They want to keep their job. And so if you take on a task of putting in some innovative process, for those officials who are involved in it, they have to be very careful with who would be the face of failure if it doesn't work. That's come out very strongly in my field work. Okay, because if you do something and it doesn't produce the outcomes, the politicians will jump on you as an official and you might lose your job. So and then I've moved on to things like critical success factors. What do you need for this thing to work? If there's no policy for it to work, then why are you implementing something? And if there's no law to support, why are you implementing this thing that that might create a problem further down the line? So the approach that I've been taking in my work is, what are the critical success factors? Identify those. Can you create them? If not, then what are the consequences? Are you really creating a problem rather than improving a situation? I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you very much, Michael, thank you for your contribution. And I think it also brings us back after of understanding what is the organizational culture, what is the context that you're dealing in, which fit for purpose land administration tends. So we have 15 minutes left. So I'm just going to ask again if Jamal Brown is available to offer his contribution. Thank you, Michael. Okay. So for those who have not read the contributions from the chat, you can do so. There's quite an extensive contribution from Jamal Brown in terms of the importance of fit for purpose and administration. The remaining questions that we had that is also very important to understand is the aspect of overcoming resistance within the profession, especially the land surveyors. We've had that similar experience here in Namibia, especially when we look at the introduction of the Flexible Land Tenure Act. It took about over 20 years to develop and finally to implement. So maybe a question for Professor Chigbu, that maybe you can just give a bit of more you can contribute a bit of more in terms of how can we accurately identify and analyze the legitimate versus the corrupt factors contributing to resistance. How can we accurately identify, analyze, and differentiate between the legitimate versus the corrupt factors that contribute to resistance to fit-for-purpose land administration? Prof. Chikwu?
Okay, thanks very much. That's a very difficult question, but I will give it a try and then comment on previous comments. Legitimate, however you want to define resistance, it's difficult to separate what is legitimate, illegitimate, or corrupt, depending on the context. But one thing how I would like to put it is, what is coming out here is that the people who brand fit for purpose and push it forward are also still members of the same family that are putting out the greatest resistance. And so the surveyors. And when we talk about the surveyors, sometimes I don't know who we're talking about, because at the level of FIG, I think everyone is a surveyor. Everyone who's within the land sector is a surveyor at the global level. But that tends to change when you come to the country level, because the geographer who's a surveyor in FIG, when it comes down to the country level, becomes a geographer and is part of the geographical society. And the land surveyor is there, and the other one is there, and that. So that makes it difficult. But I know that when it comes to using the so-called heavy equipment, seeking for standards, following conventions, it is the land surveyors we are speaking about in this case. And as Sean mentioned, I mean, they are promoting, they tend to promote the method that allows them to eat, the method from where they gain their livelihood. And based on professionalism, the method that is backed up by policy and legal framework. And that is not fit for purpose, in the broader, if we define it broadly. My concern is that these same people in the committee of land professionals do not express their concern, in this way, but rather they promote it, but then when they go on ground, they work against it. I will leave it to you to define that. I don't think it's corrupt. I don't think it's legitimate or illegitimate. I just think that it just means that there's too much mouth service and we need to do more. So, Roya, that would be my response to that. But I would like to comment on other things. First, there should be a reminder. We are discussing resistance here and impediments because that's the theme of the webinar. But I don't want us to forget that if we were to have discussion on the progress of fit for purpose, probably there will be more to be said than what we are saying here. For instance, the fit for purpose land administration is embedded in the recently validated national land policy of the Gambia. And so there's progress being made at the policy level, at the strategic level, as well as a lot of success at the bottom. So I guess we are discussing resistance as a way to draw ideas on how to even push these progresses forward. But I'd like to agree with Sean, and also for being very open about the stance of the profession from the European perspective. And Royal, anyone who has had this discussion with me before would know I have said it. The term fit for purpose. I studied valuation surveying. It is the purpose that determines the method. If you miss the purpose, everything is lost. Every other thing is wrong. And when you go to quantity surveying, land surveying, engineering surveying, whatever surveying you go into, purpose and its fitness is a core principle. And so the times that people have come to me brandishing fit for purpose as a terminology, it looks funny to me because it's almost like taking something that is very old and common and someone is presenting it to me as if it is unique, right? And on that stance, yes, I agree with Sean. But I think the idea of fit for purpose is not to negate the fact that there are other methods out there, or that the principle of fit for purpose is not a common principle. I think it's just, when we speak about fit for purpose, it should not be about the terminology. It should be about the procedure involved in it and the objective. And I think if we look at it more from that perspective, then the branding aspects, we can do without it. It becomes more of reminding someone, remember, it's gonna be fit for purpose. And then how? I think the how is the key aspect. So I do agree. And then in terms of sustainable fit for purpose, I also think that's another extension of the branding. And whether we add sustainable or not add it is an extension of it. If the fit for purpose is going to be there, and then we'll probably keep it fit for purpose and qualify it as as much as we want. I think the whole idea of fit for purpose is to find a proper approach to land administration, and that's what the message gives out there. And the branding may not be the best possible, but that branding is giving results. But obviously, it can do more, and it can make the engagement even more inclusive if we can tackle that issue. But I think there is more progress made than the resistance we'll see, and this resistance, some of them were expected. But I think that the what is terrible about it is that the resistance is coming more from the same people who go about to say it's our own, are the same people who work against it. And I think that's what we need to find a way to deal with. And I don't know how at the moment.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for the contribution. So we have about 6 minutes left and less. We have covered major aspects of the resistance on fit for purpose land administration. There was contributions on terms of how do we overcome some of these challenges, and specifically Rosalie spoke about when we are doing advocacy work, we should also consider the local realities. So what we're going to have is 2 minutes each, just to give some last comments before we close off. So we are going to start with Francis, then we'll go to Kies and Rosalie, and then we have Prof. Chico going in last, if there are any last comments as well. Francis?
Do you mind if I go next? I'm just moving from one room to another. So
Okay.
I'll speak later. Yeah.
All right, that's fine. We can go to Rosalie.
Thank you. Yeah, well, just basically, I got a lot out of this workshop. I thought the way the speakers brought different angles brought a richness to this. There was nuance that I haven't seen in the past. And, I think if we continue to engage at this level, we could start grappling with all these different challenges that have been raised. So, I would just like to strongly suggest that we have much more rigorous engagements on in the FIG 7.7 and elsewhere. But I just would like to thank Israel Chao very much for organizing this. I'm afraid he wasn't able to join us. He had internet problems. And Royal, thank you so much for moderating and everyone for attending. I found all the questions also very stimulating. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rosalie. So we can go to Kies. I'm not sure if Francis is ready yet. Kies, over to you.
I will step in. Yeah. Well, thank you all. Thank you all for the good debate and the good discussions. I think I like, to be honest, the remarks that Jean-Yves Perlot and Michael Berry made in identifying some of the resistance part, but also in thinking where the solutions are. So I think that's the path we should go. So thank you for that. My final remark would be that we should not consider fit for purpose as a static kind of thing. There should be development in our methodologies and everything that we do. So let's please all focus on what are the next steps, what are the new developments we can follow, that we can make it more successful land administration in the world, and also to have land rights for all, because that's the reason we are doing this work. Thank you.
Perfect, exactly. Francis?
Yes. Yeah, just to say thank you for having me. And I really liked the idea around sustainable fit for purpose. I think for me, what is very important is to ensure that the fit for purpose land administration is looked at from a sustainable point of view through capacity strengthening and ensuring that that these processes can be moved further, and that should be anchored in the laws, the land laws and policies, but also strengthening capacities of institutions so that then they are able to apply it in a sustainable way beyond project specific interventions that are currently running. So for me, the sustainability bit comes out very strongly for fit for purpose. And I think if we see communities having capacity, having resources that they can drive FFP at scale, then there will be less resistance towards fit for purpose land administration. Otherwise, thank you all for coming, and look forward to more engagement on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis. Prof. Chigbu?
Yeah, thank you, Royal, and thank you, Israel. I'd like to thank your working group for this particular webinar. I think we should have more of it. My take, having listened to everyone, is to ensure that the principles of fit for purpose, the incremental improvement, focus on purpose, and most importantly, flexibility. I hope that in driving the fit for purpose, that we are not being rigid, because otherwise we'll be failing the same principle which the two actually promotes. And that leads us to whether we want to rebrand it. I definitely believe in rebranding. And if it's going to cause change, it should as well be able to change. And then when we speak about structures and systems, we should always remember that those structures and systems are there because human beings are part of that system. People are part of the system. And so the human behavior aspect of implementing the fit for purpose is also important for us to know this. So that's all I would like to say. Let's just hope that we can apply flexibility in how we drive the fit for purpose, but not apply the flexibility in a way that it works against the actual purpose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. For the So we have covered, we should remember that fit for purpose land administration should be flexible. It should also be scalable. And it does not necessarily mean that when it's fit for purpose that it is low tech. You can use advanced technology for implementing fit for purpose land administration. And most importantly, as a group, as a working group in FIG and also other professionals promoting fit for purpose land administration, we should consider looking into the business model side of fit for purpose land administration, that it does not necessarily threaten the income of land surveyors professionals. Solutions for low income community design. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our webinar. We will be doing another series that will communicate in the future. And yes, thank you for the chairperson of our working group, Dr. Israel Tao, for the leadership. And unfortunately, he couldn't make it due to internet connection. Thank you all to the panelists as well for the insightful contributions. Goodbye.